I think I could tell my life story purely through experiences related to my hair. From the classroom assistant at primary school who tried to tame the cloud of cotton candy, that was my hair, by brushing it into a central parting just before the school photos. To the hairdresser aiming at a compliment when she said that my curls were like a really natural perm. Even the curl cream I was persuaded to buy recently that said it was for unruly curls, or cheveux bouclés indisciplinés, since the manufacturer was French, for my undisciplined hair. In the novel White Teeth, Irie Jones, who has an African mother and white English father, attempts to get her hair straightened. She does this in secret and doesn't realise that you're supposed to keep your hair unwashed before having the harsh, relaxing chemicals applied. This also happened to a mixed heritage member of my family, the cultural knowledge not passed on because her mother was white and didn't know. In the book Map of Me, Ronke Coker recalls her life growing up as a mixed kid in Nigeria. She writes that her physical appearance was one of my issues with my genetic inheritance. I longed to look like everyone else, to be able to sculpt my hair like all the other girls and wear colours like bright red without looking sunburned. Indeed, not to suffer sunburn itself would have been great, but most of all, not to attract attention all the time, every blessed minute of the day. To be able to be naughty in public without everyone knowing whose daughter you were. Now, that would have been priceless, she writes. And I smiled when I read that because it reminded me of my own frustrations growing up in a very white part of the rural West Country in the county of Somerset in England, and not being able to jump the queue of students waiting in line for lunch at school with my friends without being spotted immediately. This is just a small, silly example of a feeling of having to be on one's best behaviour as one of the few representatives of non-white society when I was growing up. It is perhaps what has shaped my own personal longing to belong, and yet I recognise that this is something felt by so many people for so many different reasons. The question, "Where are you from?" is explored in Afia Hirsch's book Brit-ish on race, identity and belonging. Her situation was similar but not identical to mine growing up as a mixed heritage person in a predominantly white area. She grew up in Wimbledon, a London suburb, as a daughter of an English man with German Jewish parents and a Ghanaian woman. Where are you from? When people ask me this, depending on where I am, I might say that I'm from London if I'm like here on holiday, or that I grew up in Somerset if people are asking me when I'm in London. But I know that most of the time people are looking at my face and my skin, especially my hair, and they're thinking, where are you really from? I actually had someone spell this out to me recently. A haughty woman in a posh North London gathering said, "Where are you from? You don't look British." And I was a little taken aback, as this hadn't happened to me for quite a while. I replied, and then I asked probably a little too sharply, "And where are you from?" Now, if I'm feeling generous, I will usually tell the curious stroke nosy person that my mother is the English Rose type with some Scottish roots, and my father is from St Vincent, a small island next to Barbados with an active volcano. This seems to calm them, relaxing into the knowledge of how to place me. I wonder if you've had that experience, trying to explain your heritage when someone says, "Where are you from?" I'm sure some of you have. The experience of feeling like the other, different in some way, has followed me all my life. And I imagine that many of you have been in situations where you felt out of place at some point in your lives. In Effia Hirsch's book, now I have to say, pause at this point, because I had a conversation with Tina about how to pronounce Effia's name, because in her book she has a whole section about how to pronounce her name, because it's actually quite difficult. And we saw a video where she pronounced it one way, and then I contacted my friend who has the same middle name, and she pronounced it completely differently. So that's why I'm kind of juggling around the names. But in Hirsch's book, she explores the problems of making someone feel different because of their race, especially if that race is deemed to be inferior. Yet she also highlights the history of Britain as one of constant change, migration, movement, and this means that it has always been a blended society, but perhaps just less visible than in modern times. We only have to look at the development of the English language to see this, how the influences of Latin, French, Hindi, Saxon, Norse, American, and so many others have made themselves felt in the words that we Brits still use today. As Hirsch points out, there is no manual that provides an explanation for your lived experience as a brown child growing up in this society. You have to work it out yourself. Although I wasn't subjected to a lot of overt racism growing up, I have been aware of being different from a very early age. Hirsch's experience of racism is more pronounced than mine, perhaps because she was living in Greater London, where the issues were closer to the surface. Whereas in Somerset, I was regarded as a curiosity, the unusual granddaughter of my eccentric white grandmother. I recognise that I am also a product of my surroundings. So if my life may have been quite different if I had been brought up in the urban area of the city of Bristol, the nearest large city, rather than in a quiet village in Somerset. In secondary school, a friend came up to me and said, "I want to tell you a joke. It's a bit racist, but it's really funny." He proceeded to tell the joke. It was not funny. I don't even remember the content now. This echoes Hirsch's experience and those of many others, I'm sure, when well-meaning or half-sympathetic comments land heavily. Hirsch recalls a friend saying, "Don't worry, Ath, we don't see you as black." The others concurred, she writes. I remember their faces, kind, accommodating, distancing themselves proudly from any possibility that they could be accused of being racist, and at the same time willing to overlook the problem of that my very existence created. This act of kindness, she says, is one of the most traumatic things that has ever happened to me. It taught me that being black is bad. I relive this experience every single time someone tells me that they do not see race. Lem Sissay is a British poet of colour with Ethiopian parentage, and we heard his work earlier. He grew up in children's homes in the UK's Midlands area, and he touched on this complacency of the colourblind in that poem. He wrote, "If you can see the white mist of the oasis, the red, white and blue that you defended, if you can see it all through the blackest pupil, the colours stretching the rainbow suspended, if you can see the breached blue dusk and the caramel curls in swirls of tea, why do you say you are colour-blind when you see me?" Now, for those of us who grew up not quite one thing or the other, the feelings of being different are balanced with the simple need to just get on with things. As Hirsch recalls, I would conjure thoughts of my forebears, I imagine, with gratitude and a bit of curiosity, not dwelling too deeply on their legacy and what it means today. I would thank them politely and just carry on. Now, following the death of my father, my distant dad, last year, I reconnected with long-lost half-siblings, and we have begun to piece together some of the shared history which has enabled me now to come to terms with some aspects of that side of my family. There is the other side, of course, too. And I wanted to start this service with that verse, "Come and find a quiet centre," partly to mark the beginning of our special time together, but also because the words are set to a familiar English folk tune. This is the other, perhaps more influential side of my family, my non-religious English grandmother and mother, who together raised me. It was they who would say, "We think Jesus was just a human being, but he had a lot of good things to say," without realising, as they said it, that this theological position is called Unitarianism. As British Unitarians, we share a belief in the inherent worth of all creatures, and that implies that everyone should be treated equally. But we still need to recognise that there are differences rather than brushing them under the carpet in the name of colourblindness. How do we hold these two aspects together at the same time? I suspect that this is a discussion that has been much debated in the States and within UU circles for decades now. But we in the UK are really only just catching up. Just a few years ago, a group of Unitarians of colour began meeting annually at our GA. So few in number that the remit needed to encompass basically anyone who'd been othered by colour or ethnicity, rather than having specific cultural groups. It's a small but important development in a movement which is often surprised to hear from people of colour that they have been subject to microaggressions within what is thought of as welcoming Unitarian congregations. Discussing race inevitably brings up a colonial history in the UK and beyond that is uncomfortable to say the least. But many in the UK, and perhaps in the US as well, would like to just brush under the carpet. The filmmaker Mansour Ali says that when people ask him where he's from, he says, "My parents are from Bangladesh." But he wants to say more than that. He writes, "I can almost see the connotations, the images in their mind. They visualise a deprived state, a corrupt state. That's as far as they think. And what I really want to say is, my name is Mansour. I'm from Bangladesh, which used to have the largest, richest port in the world, which was then, in 1757, ravaged by the British because of its riches, and suffered 2 great famines because of the British. Otherwise, he says, when you say your name and where you're from, there's no content. And so my advice on the where are you from question, such as it is, would be to take your lead from the person you are speaking to. Do not assume that they want to talk about their background, but don't ignore it either. Your gentle curiosity might make the other person feel awkward. You might start by speaking about your own heritage and wait to see if they want to offer something about theirs. This is difficult territory, I know. But in this, we might need to apply the platinum rule. One level up from the golden rule, it is to treat people in the way that they wish to be treated. Blessed be.